Hey, welcome to another episode. I'm Brian Grayson, your host, and today I'm excited to welcome Nick Hall. He's the founder of Vita5, a supplement company he took from zero, listen well, to multiple eight figures in revenue via DTC, then landed in over 7,000 retail doors and boost their Amazon sales 4.5 times in 3 months. This, of course, this rise led to a successful exit to a multi-billion dollar corporation. Currently, if that wasn't enough, he's the founder and CEO of Revive, an Amazon growth partner for lead brands. Hey, Nick, thanks for being on the show.
Brian, thanks for the intro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I hope I'm speaking the truth. So I'm super curious about all of that. I appreciate you being here because what you achieved, it's amazing. And, as an agency owner currently and as a brand founder, I think we can all, like all of us in the audience, get a lot of golden nuggets from you.
Yeah, well, no, thank you, and hopefully I can share some good pieces of wisdom. So,
Yeah, so let's start by something that I'm super curious about as a fellow agency owner now, which is the following, clearly, or I think at least that we as agencies might be missing something. Things have changed a lot in the last few years in the commerce space, and those agencies, providing services, whatever that be, SEO, pay that, etc., to e-commerce brands, clearly there's something we might be missing or we might not giving the importance that it deserves. So what do you think, if anything, that we as agency owners are missing?
I think so. The reason I got into an agency is because most agencies suck. And let's be real, most people that have ever worked with an agency are not happy. Because at the end of the day, whenever someone comes in, agency owners or agency salespeople go in and they promise everything and give nothing. And I just start with the basics of this. This is not a hard business. Consumer goods is very tough. You got to figure out the supply chain, you got to figure out your pricing, you got to figure out logistics, you got to figure out the financing, you got to figure out the accounting, you got to figure out the sales, the marketing. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. If you're not on it with everything, you cannot be successful. And so, while marketing and sales is super, super important for CPG, it's not everything. If you've got your margin profile wrong, if you've got the wrong retailers and the wrong channels, I mean, there's so many factors that go into it. When you look at the agency world, it's pretty simple in my opinion. There is sales and operations, really. You don't really have financing. Like, sure, you want to make sure you got margin that's like healthy and good, but like just keep it simple. Reasonable price, elite service, and make sure that everything in it is like it's results oriented. So for me, when I'm talking to companies that are trying to grow, scale, do whatever on Amazon, I'm not going to be deceiving. I go out there and I'm very transparent. So I deny more people than I take on. I've got a lot of people I talk with, and I don't work with anywhere near as many of those. I purposely have decided that I don't want to build a massive, massive agency for a reason, because I have heard from a number of people that the bigger you get, the results will naturally drop, and that's okay. Like, that's how some will say it. And I'm like, that's not okay. And so to me, I sit here and I'm like, getting results quick is very, very important. When somebody signs on with you, they are taking a risk to work with an agency. And so for me, I want to make sure let's let's get them results as fast as possible. We have a requirement within the company of like response time is highly, highly, highly important. There's
Yes.
no like waiting for a day. Like, you're either on Slack, a WhatsApp channel, a text group, like there's
Yeah.
something that you're on with us where we are like we're able to be there all the time. And then of course, like, let's make sure that we're transparent all the way throughout. There are
Yeah.
companies where we've gotten stuck. Every company has a certain ceiling. People act like every company can be a $1 billion company, and that is not the truth. There are companies that can be. There are companies that can sell 5 million on Amazon and then they get stuck. Some can sell 10, 20, 50, 100, couple hundred million, but at some point your product is going to have a ceiling. And so for us, we always are like, hey, here's where you're at. Here's where you have the chance to get to. Here's how we're going to get there. And we're going to walk you through this as we go through it together. we'll do the work, but we'll let you know, hey, this is what we're approaching. You're going to see a higher A cost for these next couple of weeks, and then we're going to pull back and, all that. So transparency, I think, is one of the biggest things. And the reality, as you know, most agency owners out there saw a YouTube video and was like, oh, Amazon's cool, or email's cool, or Facebook marketing, or Meta, or name the other thing. That's cool. I can make money off of it. And they started as that rather than the opposite, which is like where I started, which was I dealt with 11 D2C agencies, finally found one on my 12th. I went through 7 different Amazon agencies. And after 2 years of it, I had 15% decline, not growth, decline after 2 years. I took it back over and saw 450% growth. And then I was like, wait, was I just lucky with that, or was that real? So then I ended up going out and, scaling some other brands before I actually started. And I was like, oh, I know how to do this. And we just continually, we're always getting better. So,
Yeah, I share everything you said. I think that communication is key. And if there's something that I tell my team all the time is that, well, of course, there's so much we can control when it comes to results. Of course, we need to always do our part, you know,
yep.
but communication is something we can control 100%.
Yeah,
So, and
absolutely.
we cannot wait, as you said, a day, many hours to reply. Now, as you said, there are plenty of ways to be in touch with clients. And if you are not doing that, like communication, I was surprised, to be honest. Like communication in the last few years, at least, was one of the main factors why clients, at least that were talking to me in these discovery calls, what was of the was sorry one of the number one reasons they switched the agency. They were saying, I like I ask them something and they don't reply for days. And it's
Yep.
like, it's not that hard, guys. As you said, owning a brand, a DTC brand is hard. We need to figure out
Yeah.
so many things, so many moving parts. In this case, it's easier. On the flip side, I would say one thing. When I come from the background of computer science, I keep the glasses, I used to be a nerd.
Right.
I'm still a nerd. Who am I kidding? But uh, a different type of. I used to be a developer back then. My first company in 2010, in 2008, in 2010, we opened the office, was a software factory.
Yep.
Then transitioned to a startup and then to the agency for different reasons. But the point is that, you know, back then the service we offered as a software factory had a deliverable. Clients hired us for a deliverable. Now, as an Amazon growth partner, a paid ads agency, they hire us to achieve goals,
Yep.
not for deliverables. So that's trickier. Of course, it's the game we chose to play, but that's the trickier part, probably.
Yeah. No, definitely. It totally is.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask you before we transition to a different topic is the following. You said that you went through many agencies, if I got it right, when
Yep.
at the brand. What what did you see as a common pattern that the top performers had? And on the flip side, what did you see as a common pattern for the worst performers? I'm talking about the agencies, right? What did you
Yeah.
appreciate the most?
Gosh, the bigger the company you get, the more expensive it usually is, and the more of a variance that you're going to have. You're going to have some people that have been there for forever that like understand that are good, whatever, but they also may have 20 brands they work with, and it's too many. Others that may be, so I haven't seen a like true commonality to like what is it that's successful. I mean, I always like to look at the results of like what have they done? Who are the brands they've worked with is always a deceiving one. Oh, you've worked with Quest Bar, and you've worked with Goalie, and you've worked with Ollie, and you've worked with, yeah, they've gone through dozens of agencies. Now, if you're still working with them and you've been with them for 5 years, it may be a little different, but are you the reason they're successful or not? So I've had a hard time trying to figure out whatever it is. I mean, I think with a base, set your standard of what you want, right? Do you want someone that's run their own e-commerce brand before? Do you want someone that understands CPG? Do you want someone that's been running this for 20 years and has started since the day that Amazon started? Like, I think that's probably some of the most important stuff. And then really like the questions that I would ask is like, what's the team look like? Are you Are you on a wait list? Are you, because we're on a wait list still. And people have told me from like, and it's probably good business advice, but they're like, just hire more people, Nick. You make a whole lot more money. And I'm like, but the problem is it's not just hire more people. And that's what a lot of people do is they go out there and they hire, hire, hire. They got all these people, but like the training is below average. And then you start losing your results and then you start losing your clients. So like I think the biggest thing is just set your standard before you go in. Don't let the company set your standard. Like someone will not work with me if they're like, "Hey, I want a 50-year-old woman to do this." It's like, "Well, that's not me. Sorry. I'm not that." If they're like, "Oh, I want someone that worked at Amazon." I'll tell you, I know enough people at Amazon that that's probably not a good standard to have, but let's just say that's what the standard is. Keep it as your standard, you know? So, I don't know. I've seen too many. If I was to go work for a company, I'd be really, really good, but it doesn't really matter which company I go to because I know enough on the Amazon space that I could be good at a lot of these different companies unless they force me in one SOP. So I think the account manager is super important. One thing I would ask is, hey, can I have a conversation with the account manager? Because usually it's somebody selling you and then you're getting somebody else. And I've had people that they don't like working with women or they don't like working with men or they don't like working with whatever. And so they may switch an account manager and they're like, this is the best experience ever now. Or, they meet him and they're like, oh my gosh, this guy's smarter than Nick. That's freaking awesome. So
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So now I wanted to ask you about your journey with Vita 5, you took it from 0 to 8 figures. So I would love for you to, do a kind of a breakdown of your journey. If we could start, let's say, by when you went from 0 to 1, let's say before your first million in sales,
mhm.
how did that look like in terms of how did you acquire customers? What metrics were you obsessed with, let's say?
Yeah.
And yeah, what were things like, if you remember, of course?
Yeah. So we launched the business in 2016. And for everyone listening, they all wish that they could go back to 2016.
Yeah,
Well, I was in 2016. What people want to do is they want to go back to 2016 with all the tools and everything of today. And that's just not the reality. So we launched a custom built site over 2 or 3 years. It ended up costing us $250,000. We, and mind you, we were not highly funded. Like that was a lot of money for us. For 6 months, we could not figure out how to get sales to save our lives. So the story, you were very kind in the way that you introed me, but the story was rough throughout, right? It was how do we figure out this? Oh my gosh, no, we figured it out. And then 2 weeks later, boom, Facebook ads have crashed again. Oh my gosh, the algorithms changed. But the classic of everyone. But in the early days, um, super, super important for me to just connect with a bunch of other CPG founders, a bunch of people that would just give really good advice, not try to sell me on stuff, but just, hey, what's good advice with this? And after about 6 months, we continually were fixing our funnel and our Facebook ads, all that stuff. The first most important metric is just look at your funnel metrics, right? And don't go too far. Like, let's not look at like you can't figure out in month one what your LTV is going to be. And so the number that you put out there of like, I'm going to be a $5,000 LTV, you're not. You're likely going to be less, but who cares? Just get started with the first thing. Here's your funnel. How many clicks are coming in? What's your click through rate? What's your conversion rate to add to cart? What's your conversion rate to checking out? What is your average order value? One thing at a time. And I think if people can just break that down to start, they'll be in a much better place. Because if you've got the best website ever, but you've got a horrible click through rate, what do you need to focus on? I mean, you got to focus on the creative, the imagery, the, copy, anything within the ad itself. And so that's where it's for me, just take it one step at a time, chunk by chunk, and then you'll be able to gradually piece away. Once you figure out the creative, now jump to the next part. How do we get more people through to our site a little bit further? At the end of the day, one thing I think that's different in 2012 to 2018 was everyone always talks about there's Facebook arbitrage. Everyone was making money. And I'll tell you, like, we made way more money then than I would probably be able to make today in Facebook. Like, I mean, I ran a lot of our Facebook ads. I understood how to do all of it, like, worked with a lot of the agencies very, very, very closely. And I'll tell you, like, today it is a lot more difficult than where it was. So that's my take.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. But There's something interesting the way you said about, the fact that we all wish that we were back in 2016 running Facebook ads with today's tools. But back then
Yeah.
we didn't have these tools. So of course we had a different algorithm, different rules, but we didn't have the tools that we have today. We
Hmm.
didn't need some of them, of course, because of course, I don't know, the tracking was, more accurate. We were
Yeah, true.
in $1
That's
and
true.
had 10 as a return, but we would have needed more, that we didn't have back then. So back then, please correct me if I'm wrong, you were leveraging Facebook ads as the main
That was our
revenue.
main. Yeah. And
And
I'll say this, when we first started, I was so bullish on Facebook ads. Our site was a total mess, okay? Total mess. Facebook ads, garbage. We just thought you put a picture up and you got sales. That's not how it was never that easy. Let's not like deceive ourselves with that. We spent, I think it was like 10 or $15,000 to get our first sale of 30 something dollars.
wow,
10 or $15,000 to
that's
make
a lot.
30. That's a bad return, right? Like our investors are probably sitting there like, these guys are clueless. But we had so much faith, and like everyone we talked to was like, you got to do Facebook ads, you got to do Facebook ads, figure it out, figure it out. But the problem is we just kept getting bad agencies, people that had no clue, and they didn't understand, which I think this is where you're a lot different than other people, is they didn't understand the full funnel marketing, right? And we're talking, yes, full funnel from from the clicking from Facebook to the website to also like the full LTV and all that stuff. But don't jump to LTV when you don't know how to get it click.
Step by step, definitely. And you
Yeah.
mentioned that when we were talking about probably about Amazon, that each brand reaches a different ceiling, let's say. What was the ceiling for you, or the first wall that you hit in your business as you
Well,
started?
when you hit a couple $1,000,000 a year on D2C, it becomes really difficult with churn. And so, you know, ours was subscription at the time of what we were doing. And I mean, you go look at all the D2C companies, Purple, Casper, mattresses. You can go look at like Mudwater, all these other all the D2C companies that you think of off the top of your head. And then go online and type in Mudwater funding, Casper funding, Purple mattress funding. You know, go through all of them. Every one of them, Care of, okay? Care of, similar company to what we started with. So we did custom gummy vitamin packs to start. We raised a couple $100,000. They raised $100 million. Now they sold for $280 million for 70% or whatever. Guess what just happened last month? They just shut the doors completely. They sold a bear and end up turning around and shutting the doors because the metrics never worked. It was this big like, oh, let's just blow this thing up when they didn't have their first metrics right from the start. Now, were they doing more in revenue than us? Yeah, they were. Did they sell for more than us? Yeah, they did. But like, I don't know. Do you feel good about that? It's I mean, the business model never worked. So I just think that's a super important thing. So once you hit a couple million in revenue, you're gonna have to find different ways of acquiring new customers and all that stuff. And that's some of this is like email marketing, SMS, TikTok advertising, you know, all the different ways because you're going to be acquiring all these customers. Then you have a certain amount of churn, and then you have to spend a certain amount just to keep your revenue at the same amount. And then it's just, you know, it's a rolling effect. Then you got to spend even more to grow. And so that's why they raised $100 million because they were like, oh, well, we can grow even faster if we're at this. And it's like 12 months, you're going to have no business because they never got anything right.
Yeah, profitability is something that wasn't, let's say, a popular term up
Totally.
until a few years ago, right?
Yep. Yep.
Profitability is in everyone's mouth, these days because it's something they don't have any other choice. They need to be profitable
Right.
now. There are two ways where that comes to mind, to be profitable. One is by decreasing cost, and the other is by increasing value or what the lifetime value, let's say. The
Yep.
problem with decreasing costs is that it's fine, but there's a limit to how much you can do that without sacrificing growth, etc. Right? So
Yep.
one is how do you increase value as a company? How do you increase AOV? How do you decrease the time between purchases? How do you encourage people to stay longer, reduce churn if you have a subscription? So these are all battles that many companies, at least the companies that I know, they weren't paying attention to. Customer success, has a
Yeah.
lot to do with that. So what did you guys do there? Because I mean, no company is perfect. We all learn as we go, you
Sure.
know, mentors help, etc. But we all learn as we go. So at which point, if any, of course, did you notice that those things were important for your growth? Like, I don't know, customer success, retention,
Yeah.
churn, etc.
Well, I'm gonna start even a step before, and I think it's one of the most important things. I got a call from my sister the other day, and she's like, "Hey, I'm looking at starting my own company. What are your thoughts on it?" And I was like, "Okay, what's your company? Okay, that's what you want to do. You need to go out and find every single company that's doing plus or minus that. Don't give me the crap of if no one's doing it, that don't start it.
It
If
sounds
somebody's doing it right, like I mean, you could say like a robot lawnmower, right? Like that's an innovation, like that's fine. But like there's lawnmowers, that's your current substitute or competition or whatever. So what I always tell people is like, we're making this too hard. So there are people that back in 20 and the reason we're making it too hard is because some people's heads are still stuck in 2012. And in 2012, you could go out there and anything that you saw online, you could sell. And it was like, I mean, I could sell Celsius, I could sell a bottle, I could do anything, right? This mic I could sell, a keyboard, anything. Nowadays, you can't just go sell anything. I mean, people would go on Alibaba and they'd say, here's a trendy product, let's go sell it. That is not a thing of today because someone else will come out and they'll make something better like that. And it's boom, done. I was talking with a company, they do about over 50 million on Amazon, pet company, and talking about product launches and everything. The reason they are so successful is because they launch something and they'll launch with maybe a little bit above an MOQ. Like they've got tons of budget and stuff like that now, but they will they will immediately the first feedback they hear, they don't sit there and they go, "Oh, this customer's a jerk." They go in and they fix the problem. Oh, your bag ripped? I'm gonna get a higher quality bag. Oh, this was too thin. I'm gonna get a little bit thicker. Oh, this eye wipe for a dog wasn't wet enough. We're gonna fix that every single time. Iteration, 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 iteration. And so the reviews get better and better and better and better. And so the value to the customer is always better. For me on the gummy vitamin side, taste was number one. But this is how we looked at it. And I think it's really, really important for others to look at it like this if you're in the consumer good world. You got to think we got five senses, and I always like to add one extra one. But so the first thing is you're going to see the product. Is the product look good? Is it some generic kind of jank, crappy packaging? This is not good packaging. Okay. Just garbage. You just put a label on something, put the name on it, nothing to it. So sight's the first thing. Also, how does your product look? Does it look nasty? Does it look delicious? Like, how does it look there? Um, and then you're gonna smell it, right? So you open it up. Does it smell like some nasty fish oil where you're like, oh, it's horrible? Um, and then you've got feel. So you pull it out. Is it super sticky? Like for me, it was gummy. So super sticky, or is it too squishy? Is it too hard? What is it? There's taste, and then there's I mean, hearing is a little bit, but like it could be an extreme one. Like if you hear crunch, that's gonna be nasty in a gummy vitamin, right? The sixth one that I like to always put out is there's emotion to it too. And for us specifically, it was we're selling low, like one of the products we launched was low sugar gummy vitamins. Do these taste and make you feel right? So does your melatonin actually work? The efficacy there. Does the elderberry or the vitamin C or the immunity or whatever, is that actually working? And so those are all like super, super important things to make sure of. And the more that you can hit on, the better chance you'll have of being successful. If you just taste good, but it looks like crap, your packaging looks bad, like those are points of friction within a customer. We, well, yes, we were very like technical and in depth with how we did our LTV and client retention, all that stuff. You can only marketing hack so far. If you have a product that tastes like shit, people are going to cancel. They don't care if they have to call. They don't care if they have to email. They don't care if they have to walk down to the store to do it. They're going to cancel. So that's my thing is go back to the basics of the product.
percent. The other day, as a matter of fact, I gave, let's say, a workshop, webinar, whatever, to an e-commerce community in the UK, and I listed and described the 10 things that are working in 2024 for the brands that I have interviewed here in the pod and the ones that I follow and the ones that I work with. And there was no trick or tactic or shortcut. The number one
Hmm.
was having a great product.
Yeah,
And
100%.
people might feel is like, am I here on this workshop to listen to a guy saying that we need to have a great product? Duh.
Yeah.
It's like, but do you have a great product? Like, how do
Yeah.
you? So we went through the steps that the companies, at least that I follow, that I have interviewed, etc., have actually made sure they have a good product. For example, one skincare brand, they blind tested
Nice.
the product 63 times. Do you know
There we
why
go.
63 and not 62 or 64? That's because it's when over 90 something percent or so, they said, pick them over their competitors, over the
Nice.
blind test, you know? So
There we go.
that's how far people are willing to go to make sure they have a great product. Of course,
Yep.
not every company needs to do a blind test, but there are many ways to know you have a great product. So another brand, for example, they did something more scrappy and fun as well. They went to Central Park
Nice.
with a sign saying, ask us about our bags. They sell bags that are useful for many life situations, going to the gym, to the office, travel, blah, blah, blah.
Nice.
They have, celebrities like players from the Giants and many other cool stuff going on for them. But they started that way. And to this day, they do it that way. And you know what? There are a few things about that. One, people might say it doesn't scale. That's right and wrong. First, it does scale because it's something non-scalable. But these days, you record people doing
Yep.
that. And of course, they have scaled those, contents all over the social. But it it also gives you the what you don't have online, which is you see, as you said with the senses, you see and listen to customers live while going through your product, reviewing it, open the zippers or whatever,
Yep.
and you can see how they act. You can listen to what they say.
Yep.
If they're looking for a bigger pocket and they see that their laptop doesn't fit or whatever, it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
can actually interact with people. So, and this is not something I said or they said. Even Jack Ma, Alibaba's founder, you mentioned the company earlier, said that too. You need to first do non-scalable things before scaling,
Yep.
right? So having a
Totally.
great is key, and it's actually fulfilling the promise. The promise is you are actually telling people in your marketing after all, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, another way that I like doing it is I always on Amazon specifically, I'll go look at all the competitors, I'll take the reviews, find the good, the bad, everything. And I just pen and paper, basic stuff, right? Pen and paper, I may write a Word doc and just say everything people don't like. Do. You have to beat them on all those things. Now, all the things they're good at, can you match them or beat them still? You may not be able to beat them on everything. Now, if you're beating your competition on everything, either you're lying or you actually have an amazing product. Most people are lying though. You're probably losing on something. And so it's like, but it's okay. You know, let yourself lose on some of the stuff, but then fix it and make it better.
I love to talk about retail now. Some people listening or watching this, they might be thinking, should I go into retail? I have
Yeah,
gotten many comments from people, saying, I've been, everything is more expensive on Meta ads or whatever
sure.
ads, these days everything costs more, blah, blah, blah. And should I go into retail? We are thinking about it. Of course, I have no clue about that because I have never done it myself. So I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you about that. When did you decide to go into retail and what advice could you give someone that is looking to doing that these days?
Yeah. So our mindset was like we want to be D2C forever, right? Just like everyone back in the day. And
Yeah.
nobody is that anymore. Nobody is. Well, some newer, maybe more like immature or just they haven't seen it, whatever. They're, maybe just like don't understand the whole space of it. But look at it, like Liquid IVs in stores, Vital Proteins is in stores, Ollie's in stores on Amazon. Like all these people are like, oh, well, it's going to cannibalize my sales if I go somewhere else. have a different offering. Like each store is different, right? Like you're not going to sell what you're going to sell to Walmart, what you would sell to Costco, right? Different sizes, make sure that's appropriate, all that stuff. You got to be really smart with that stuff. What I find is you definitely want to be doing a few million, if not tens of millions, before you go into retail. You need to have a substantial budget. Retail is tough, and I don't mean tough to get in. Like we went 0 to 7,000 doors in 2 years, and to be honest, we had another 13,000 waiting for us. And I purposely pulled out of a lot, and I stopped growing our retail at a certain point because I was like, if we don't get this right, it could crush our company. Retail is when people say retail is expensive, what they mean is this. If you get into Target, it will cost you $50,000 to get into Target plus $15,000 per product to get in the doors of Target. We had over a dozen products in Target. You can do the math on that. That is hundreds of thousands of dollars just to be in there. And then after that, you've got all your other fees and all the other stuff. When you go into retail, this is for like, beginners that are just learning about retail. Most retail is going to sit out there and say, your product is $10. I'm buying it for 5. If you do a $2 off, you eat all $2. So it's not like you're taking 20% off. You're taking 40% off because only you're paying for that $2 off coupon. And so that's where people talk about like, oh, it's expensive. If you go into drugstores, good luck, right? Like, I mean, I'm not gonna call names out, but I'll just say blanket statement. Drugstores in general are known for charging you $20 because a nail's sticking out of the pallet. They don't care if it's their driver that pulled it in as a nail sticking out. They're charging you $20. Oh, you've got a sticker missing on it, and your product costs $70 to ship in a case of it. They charge you $150. Well, how the hell does that make sense, right? Doesn't make sense at all. And so you got to be really, really cautious. That's something where, and I've got a really good referral that, not to like shout out a referral, but I'm like, I've got a really, really good guy that he will at least tell people like, hey, should you go into this or not? And I respect him so much for it because if I would have listened to him on certain things, I would have saved myself a whole lot of money. There was a year that we had written off. At the end of the year, we ended up writing off hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I was like, gosh damn it. And he's like, oh, yeah, well, that's because you did this. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I mean, him just saying that one thing, if I would have listened to him, I would have saved myself a ton of money. So,
You think that it's worth it going to retail more for the brand awareness than for the money you can get out of it?
well, I think all of them are different strategies, truthfully. So if you're going D2C, you're trying to get high average order value, right? And so that may be like bundling together, doing whatever. If you go retail, you need to have multiple products out there because you want to have a brand block on the shelf, show all your stuff. If you go Amazon, you want to go really, really deep with one product, put all your money into one product. I think what people have to figure out is like, what is the strategy they want to do? Are they going to go D2C? Now, if you can be profitable on D2C, it's great, right? There's a reason why I went into Amazon. I looked at Facebook ads and Google ads and, all these other strategies. I looked at, selling into retail, like, oh, I could go sell people into retail, no problem. But the reason that I went into Amazon specifically is I can take one product and I can take you from 5 grand a month to $300,000 a month. Like, that's pretty freaking sweet. And also, I can do it fairly profitably. I mean, you may not be profitable month one, but you can be profitable pretty quick. D2C, some people are able to do some of that stuff with that. Usually you've got a ceiling or whatever, and usually it costs some money for a couple months. Then you start making your money back, and then you can invest more. And then retail. So, like, to me, I would never rush retail. Retail would be the last one. You lose a lot of control at retail. It becomes a full-time job. I mean, I'm sure you've got clients, and you're probably sitting there, and some of these clients are like, dang, I'm glad I'm not them. And then you've probably got a couple of them where you're like, damn, I wish I was them.
Yeah.
And the ones that you wish you were them are the ones that have a really good product, sell a lot, and have a really small team. When you go retail, you're getting, your VP or director of sales, you've got to have natural channel, your blah, blah, blah. Just like employee, bunch of nonsense. Go to all these shows, do all this crap that's not going to make you money for a long time. And then hopefully in 18 months, now you're at a little bit more scale. So,
So you started a company, you took it to 8 figures, you went into retail with 7,000 plus doors, and you said that you denied many of them as well later on. And then you sold the company. Could you
yep.
please explain that part a little bit? How do you, how did you plan it since the beginning? How did you,
Yeah.
how did the process go? How did you find the buyer? And, how can everyone listening thinking about doing that, you know, structure
Let
the
me,
company to be a sellable company, let's say?
yeah, so I'll start with this, and it's gonna burst a lot of people's bubbles, and a lot of people aren't gonna listen to this. Okay, so a lot of people that's gonna go in one ear out the other. For those that actually listen, this is very, very, very important. Do not build a business to sell it. I wanted to build a business early on to sell it for 100 million and have the big house and have the nice cars and do all that stuff. Over time, I found out that I really don't care about any of that stuff. And as you start to make the money, you start to realize, like, is that actually important? What are you doing? What's the purpose in doing this? Is it to have a big house and sit next to someone else who's working all the time, that never sees their family, that doesn't have a relationship with God? Like, what's the point in all of this? There's more to it to me. As we started building our company, it was, don't get me wrong, we had a lot of good years, good months, good days, all of that. The selling process was a massive headache. We're in, we're out. We're in. We'll pay you this much in cash. We'd like to get this done in 30 days. Then they stop responding. Another buyer comes in, super interested in the company. Show me all your financials. Boom, ghosts you. Would they just steal your information? Oh, I mean, it is like the biggest yo-yo effect. I have told myself this specifically with Revive, which is the Amazon marketing agency. I don't care to try to sell a company again. Yes, we had a successful exit. Yes, it was great. I literally just talked to a friend of mine who sold his company and, sold to another large, very, very large company, really good exit as well. And we both had the exact same sentiment. Not like, yes, I was thankful for the company to sell. Yes, I was grateful for the opportunity and, all of that. I was more excited just to get the process over with. This was like running a marathon. You're like, just get me through the damn finish line. I don't even care. I ain't running a marathon again. This wasn't worth it. Like, anything like that. So, I mean, the good side of it, right? So I did not use a broker. Probably should have used a broker, but I knew a ton of people in the space. I mean, I know hundreds, probably thousands of people in the CPG space. And there was a bunch of people that were like super interested in like, hey, this is really cool what you're building. You've done so much cool stuff with Target and all these retailers and Amazon. I just want to learn from you. Can you take our business from this to this? Da da da, whatever. So I had a lot of those. Brokers will absolutely help, but it's almost like I look at it like a marriage. And having a wife or having a husband is not necessarily a good thing. But having a good wife is amazing. Having a bad wife, that is hell. And so, same thing with a broker. Figure out all your values, all your things, right? So for me, God is the foundation of my life. And then the next thing is like all of my things go onto that, right? But they all have to sit on the foundation of like God is the center. And so if I don't see that with others, things are going to be falling. And so that's a super, super important thing. I would just tell people this: go look at all of history and the stock market and companies buying, selling, whatever. Companies have always appreciated companies that make money, meaning they make profit. Companies at times, when the market's really, really good and people are like kind of losing their mind, they like high revenue, high growth, high this, high that, whatever. And they don't care as much about profit. But at all times in business, they've always appreciated profit. So build yourself a good, profitable business. Do not build it to sell it. Just because you're in Target, someone doesn't give a shit about Target, just so you know. That's called pride. And so build a just good, solid foundation of a business. And if you've got something that profits really, really well, someone's going to want to buy it. So that's a really, really big thing. We had an investor tell us that all the way throughout. And then we signed some retail accounts that sounded really, really good. And he's like, F that, don't do it. And we're like, no, we're doing it. We're trying to sell. And it's like, we probably got a worse valuation for getting into that and not making profit on it than the other way around.
Nick, uh, I wanted to first thank you for everything you have said so far. I think I have, you know, uh, taken a lot of golden nuggets from you. I'm sure the audience is getting a lot of golden nuggets from you as well. Before we go, I wanted to ask you about your current business. You know,
Yeah.
you help, correct me if I'm wrong at any point, please. You currently help brands succeed on Amazon or grow on Amazon, right?
Yep.
So please, for those listening or watching these, please tell me why Amazon, What are the ups and downs, and why can you help them?
Yeah. I mean, well, so this is the first thing is I can't help everyone. And I'm very, very open about that. What I will say is, happy to take a look at it and see. The reason why I did Amazon over some of the others is I found that it was a channel that is consistent with being able to be profitable fairly quickly. You've got the most control over it, and it gives you really, really good return. In terms of those that are looking at like, hey, do I get on Amazon? I'll say this: you will likely be on Amazon at some point. People today in 5 years will be like, I wish I got on Amazon in 2024, 2025. Just like we're wishing that we got back on it in 2016, just like in 2012 and 2005. Like everyone is wishing for all that stuff. So the sooner you get on, you'll be on it at some point. So why not build your reviews? Why not build some of the company and all that stuff? But you got to make sure you do it the right way. A lot of people will go out there and they'll try to start selling on Amazon and they just put a listing up and they're like, all right, cool. And then they're like, well, it's just not a good channel. It's not selling. And it's like, well, your pictures are awful. I mean, look at it from a consumer customer's perspective. Like they wouldn't want to buy it. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is I like to just go through and see like, is it worth it for you to put money into it? Like, is there a market for it? How is the competition? Like, how are their reviews, their ratings, their sales volume? Like, what did they do to succeed? And I go through and do like this deep analysis to figure out like, is it worth it? Because for me, what I always like doing is if every single brand I've taken on, literally to this day, every single brand I've taken on, I have scaled not just a little bit, like substantially. And people go, oh, well, that's probably BS. No, it's not because I always vet them before I take them on. And what a lot of people do is they're like, oh, well, I just need a little bit of money. So I'm going to take on this new brand. I've gone the opposite way. I don't need the money. And so I'll take them on if I think that I can do something with them. But I'm not just going to take them on to take them on. And I'll only take on so many brands a month and so much volume. And then after that, I have a wait list. And so every account manager that I have can only take on so much. We make sure to limit everything because that's how we get results. So,
Well, when you talk about Amazon, I wanted to ask you this follow-up question, if you don't mind. Do you refer to either or both paid and organic?
yep. Yeah. I mean, at this point, unfortunately, it is you got to pay to play. I mean, are there some categories where like you don't have to spend as much? Sure. But you gotta work them together though. Because the overall goal, you're gonna start 80% of your sales, you're just starting today. 80% of your sales are coming from paid, 20% are organic. And then boom, over time, you're gonna switch. Hopefully you can do 90-10, 90% organic, 10%. It depends. Kind of. So for that, it's you got to make sure that you know how to do the SEO alongside the PPC, and they both kind of go together. Like when you think about Amazon, it's about conversion rate and velocity, and you need those two together. And so people go, well, how do I get velocity? You pay for it. Amazon's a public company. They like having better revenue and better profit every year. So what do? They make you pay more every year and they make more ad spots. It's just the reality. Facebook's the same, Google's the same. They're all, plus or minus. So
Yeah. So before we wrap up, I have one last question for you. Um, I call it this moment is like the gratitude question, let's say. Um, do you would you like to give a shout out to someone, a former boss, a mentor, someone you follow or has helped you throughout your career?
yeah, I think so. And I would highly, highly suggest this for others. This this guy has built one of the biggest organizations in the world. He has an incredible family, awesome kids, grandkids. His work-life balance, I think, has become better and better throughout life. He's created one of the biggest leadership podcasts in the world, and the organization he runs is called Life Church, and his name is Craig Rochelle. And I don't know him personally, but I'll tell you, the content that he puts out, I listen to almost everything in 2 times, 2.5 times speed. I mean, I've got apps on my computer to run through things faster because most stuff is just blah 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 blah. His is the like one of the only ones that I ever listen to in 1 time speed because it is just nugget after nugget after nugget. If you're Christian or not Christian, listen to his leadership podcast. It is actually like some of the best content I've ever listened to, something I never want to miss. If you are a Christian, listen to that and listen to his sermons. The sermons are unreal. It just keeps you there. His full vision is to build people to become fully devoted followers of Christ. And he actually means it through everything. And the whole organization goes through everything. They're not there to just take a check from you. They're there. I mean, literally in their offering, they say, if you are in need of food or shelter, you can take money from the bucket. Like, what other church does that? That's pretty cool. And so, anyways, I've really respected the guy. He's got a ton of books out there. So yeah, Craig Rochelle.
Amazing. So as always, we will include these in the show notes. You can look for them at the ddcinsider.com. Click on the episode, and then you will find everything we discussed, including the these podcasts, and of course the name of this person. And why not the social handles and website of Revive, and of course the social handle for you. You know, I wanted to ask you before you go, where can people go and find you personally, Nick?
Gosh, I'm not super online, but you can find me. LinkedIn's probably the best. Or you can do Nik. Last name's Hall, Hall. So spell my name a little bit funky, but yeah, LinkedIn's probably my best one. And then, of course, if you want to send me an email, it's nick@revivemp.com. So feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to chat with others. So
Amazing, Nick. Again, thanks for everything. And it was a pleasure to have you here in the show.
yeah, thank you. And thanks, Brian.